Well, good morning, everyone. Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Members, please make your selection on the tablet. Chair, we have a quorum with 10 members present and 5 members absent.
Thank you, Clerk. Let's begin with non-agenda public comment. This provides 2 minutes for anyone who would like to comment on something that is not on today's agenda, but is within the purview of MTS. Clerk, do we have any non-agenda public comment?
We do. Cameron Hamidi, please make your way to the podium.
I'd like to make 2 points. The first is to thank the chair and board member Ela Rivera and Ms. Cooney for coming to San Ysidro yesterday to combat taxi wildcatters. It was on the news last night. Second, we have a problem with taxi fees. The way fees are imposed on taxis needs to be reviewed by the board. MTS has accumulated $1 million in taxi reserves, and the fees have been charged in a very disorganized way, which makes them illegal taxes. Before COVID, the fees used to go to a finance subcommittee of the board. Post-COVID, the CEO has plenary power. It does not need to go to the TAC or even this board, and the only way to challenge it is to file an appeal and a lawsuit. This is very wasteful because it leaves MTS open to attack every year. By contrast, the San Diego Airport Authority only allows the board to set fees, and the airport CEO has no power to impose or waive fees. At MTS, taxi fees have been changed and waived very unevenly. For example, we have a $60 fee this year, which the CEO kindly waived for first to June 30th, then to October 31st to incentivize behavior. And now in November, the fee may be charged, which makes the $60 fee a tax, which penalizes behavior. We spent over an hour at the TAC meeting yesterday talking about how bad the fees and budget are, and everybody would like to appeal to the CEO to continue to waive the $60 fee for 2 more months to be fair. Taxi fees were cut in half the last time we had $1 million surplus in 2016. You have the sheet, and the reserve was brought back down to $229,000 before COVID. Great leaders listen, so I would like to ask the board to encourage the CEO to listen to us and ask the CEO to continue to be fair and continue to waive the $60 fee for the remaining 2 months of this year, and then only she has the power to redraft all the 2025 fees before January 1st because a formal appeal has been filed. For 2026, please keep the public's trust. Please amend the MTS ordinances.
Your time has expired. Next is Flavio Olivere. Flavio, please make your way to the podium.
Good morning, everybody. I'm a taxi driver, and this fee is a $60 fee that you guys trying to charge us for when we trying to change from one radio service to another, because some radio servers, they do the job they're supposed to do, but some of them, they just charge us and we don't get anything back. So when you're trying to go and shop for the better price, and now they're trying to say, if you try to get a better price for a different radio service, we're going to be charged just to have the option. I think for a place in California that is considered to be one of the most democratic states in the United States, I don't think we should be penalized when you want to try to get a better price for a radio service. And even though we pay for that price, for whatever price the radio service charge us, and we pay for a radio service for what? We don't get a call from them, but they say you gotta have, you know? So we pay, but this thing to say, if you're trying to get a better price or shop around, we're gonna have to pay for it just because we're gonna ship from one to the other, what's gonna be better for us. I don't think that's right. And I think you guys should take in consideration and think about that. You know, we shouldn't be penalized if you want to get a better price for what we're going to be working with. Thank you.
Next is call-in user 1. Call-in user 1, please unmute yourself now.
Hey there, calling user 1, otherwise known as Truth. Besides Gopal, you know who else doesn't ride the trolley? Validator Vivian. She needs to start tapping to ride. So in 1 month's time, MTS had at least 3 stabbings and 1 shooting occur. I've noticed a pattern of early morning and late night violence. So preventing this stuff is not that complex. Security needs to be mandatory at those times. I have a friend who had an idea for a security line where a person wouldn't even have to speak. Maybe just press a button and security could see someone's exact location, which trolley line, and where, so security and or police could immediately be sent to respond. I would also like to see MTS be inspired by Sandag and adopt a Vision Zero plan. Not one person should be subjected to violence or death while waiting for or riding a bus or trolley. That should be the current standard that MTS aims for rather than the current path of inviting lawsuits. MTS customers are the regular 2% of people who are just trying to get to work, school, and health appointments. MTS should be taking any injury that happens on or around public transit to our county's most vulnerable residents more seriously than Sandag treats their prized, non-existent 1% bicyclists who willingly drive in traffic on roads meant for cars. And different topic, the 8th Street station in National City needs a better pathway from the city to the trolley. Right now, people must walk from 8th Street past a freeway entrance, then under an underpass that is pretty dark with only 2 lights. The city lights are an easy fix, and there's some minor sidewalk safety issues. Beautification via some artwork and informational signage would help. The major fix is the freeway entrance. If there was a way to put in a stoplight or some beacon light or something, it would greatly increase the safety for National City residents who want to walk to the trolley. Considering that National City is posed for more high-density stacking packs everywhere, this should be a high priority for both the city and MTS. You know, if only there were some great leaders or something, maybe some of this stuff would have already been done. Thank you.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. Let's move on to our consent items, which are items 3 through 18. Clerk, is there any public comment on the consent items this morning?
We do not.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent items? We have a motion from Vice Chair Goebel and a second from Director Hall. Is there any discussion? Let's go to Director Moreno.
Am I on now? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I definitely do not need to pull any of the items, but I would like to speak on item number 8, which is the Social Equity Listening Tour Bus Stop Shelter Upgrade Design Services Work Order Agreement. I was very pleased to see this project moving forward as it represents a crucial step in addressing the needs identified through the Social Equity Listening Tour. The Social Equity Listening Tour process was a powerful reminder of the voices that we at MTS serve. And I'm glad to see that the fruits of the working group coming to fruition. The feedback from our residents and transit riders made it clear that safe, accessible, and comfortable bus stops are essential for their well-being and their ability to rely on our transit system. Obviously, prioritizing shelters and seating upgrades at these 28 locations is not just a matter of comfort, but it's a significant step towards inclusivity in transit services. So I'm very happy to hear this coming forward. Once again, I want to commend MTS staff and everybody in the Social Equity Working Group for their efforts in identifying this very critical need. And it's very clear to me that this engagement is very relevant to the work we do. And so thank you to staff and thank you to everybody involved.
Thank you, Director Moreno. Is there any further discussion on the consent items? Seeing none, we have a motion from Vice Chair Goebel and a second from Director Hall. Clerk, please call the roll.
Members, please make your votes on the tablets. Chair, the motion passes with 10 members voting yes and 5 members absent.
Thank you, Clerk. That brings us to item number 19, which is a public hearing to consider adoption of resolutions of necessity and authorization of condemnation proceedings. And we're going to invite Karen Landers to present this item. Once you get set up and settled in, please feel free to begin your presentation.
All right, good morning. Is my mic on? Okay. So as you know, Karen Landers, MTS General Counsel. With me is David Skinner, our outside counsel in this matter from Myers & Nave. So as the chair mentioned, we're here to talk about adoption of a resolution of necessities for our CTAC project. And so as a reminder, the CTAC project is the Clean Transit Advancement Campus, which is the name that we've given to MTS's new bus maintenance facility, which would be our 6th bus division in the region. This additional bus division is necessary to allow MTS to expand future bus services. Our current divisions are either at or near capacity. So if the board wants to be able to increase service frequencies or add new routes, that would mean adding more buses, and we need space to store and maintain those buses. And so we need a new division to be able to do that at any capacity. It also is necessary to accommodate our transition to zero emission bus standards by California's 2040 deadline. That's both just to, this division would be completely zero emission, so it would be built from the ground up, including all of the charging and other facilities that are necessary for that technology. But also, as in later years, we slowly at our other divisions are building charging infrastructure to accommodate as we order and receive buses. That takes away space at our existing divisions because of, just the structures. We're trying to build them as efficiently as possible. But also during some of those construction periods in the later phases, then there won't be the space for the buses that normally occupy that space while we're doing construction. So another thing that this bus division would allow is to temporarily relocate some of those buses to that division to accommodate these construction over the time period. But really, regardless of that ZEB deadline, and if the state keeps it or extends it, if MTS wants to expand bus services, we have to have a new division. And so that's one of the reasons that the board has approved this project in general. The site that we're talking about is located in the future service area for this division. So as part of the analysis of this project, we went and looked at, if we expand services, where are they most likely to be concentrated, or where would be the most efficient way to locate it and balance the rest of our service throughout the region. It also helps then reduce deadhead time for buses reaching the beginning and end of the routes. You can't put a division too far from the routes they'll operate, or it'll be a significant cost. Approximately 5 years ago when we looked at this, and costs are more expensive now, but it was estimated to be about $1 million a year of extra operating costs for every 5 minutes of additional or 5 miles of operating distance. So this site provides the best opportunity for MTS to efficiently plan and adjust our transit services. The site selection process that the board went through back in October of 2022, the board adopted a mitigated negative declaration and a monitoring program under CEQA for the project. They also approved the Site 7 as the selected site. That was after the CEQA process, and also under federal law, there's a Title VI civil rights and environmental justice analysis that has to happen before you choose a site for a facility like this. So the site was chosen. It was 12.09 acres. It's at Federal Boulevard and 47th Street. And then after CEQA was approved, we went through the NEPA clearance process with the FTA, the National Environmental Protection Act. And so we received our clearance under NEPA in July of 2023, which is the point where we're allowed to start property acquisition. So for the property acquisition for this project, there are 4 properties to acquire. MTS commissioned appraisals that were completed in late 2023 and then later updated throughout 2024. And we negotiated the purchase of 2 of those properties equaling about 8.29 acres. And we closed escrow on those properties in March of 2024. So we have 2 properties that are remaining that we have not been able to acquire via negotiation. Those are a 2.4 acre property at the northwest corner of Federal Boulevard and 47th Street. We call that the Lone Oak property. And then the other one is 4550 Federal Boulevard, which is 1.35 acres, which we call the Bayshore property. And I'll get into a little bit of the specifics of each of those. So the Lone Oak property is owned by an entity called Lone Oak San Diego 3, but it's an entity that's owned and associated with Reyes Holding Company and Crest Beverage. It's the former Coca-Cola distribution facility that's in that part of town. This specific parcel is a surface parking lot that is used in conjunction with a 17.64 acre, what we call a larger parcel in appraisal terms, that is owned by Lone Oak. And that's where the warehousing and distribution facility for Crest Beverage is, that's across the street. This property was appraised for just over $9 million, which includes property value and what's called severance damages, which is associated when you take a parcel, when you sever a parcel. So the larger parcel, we're taking part of it. That piece had some value to the larger parcel. And so that's additional value that the property owner is entitled to. We did make a formal offer to purchase on June 14th of this year, and that was attached in the record before you. Just to point out the surface parking lot up in the right corner, that's a Lone Oak property. And then the larger Lone Oak parcel is just below that, the giant warehouse and building that you see. And then the other part in red is the rest of the Site 7 parcel. The Bayshore property is 1.35 acres on Federal Boulevard. It's owned by the Bayshore Group that's doing business as Bayshore Partners. It is a light industrial facility, about 20,000 square feet with some office space, and it is currently tenant occupied. It was appraised at $4.45 million, and we made formal offers to purchase on June 14th and again on June 25th of this year. And the Bayshore property is shown in green on this picture, and red is the remaining parts of Site 7 for the CTAC project. So one of the things that state and federal law require is that property owners are entitled to due process and other rights in an eminent domain context. And so and agencies like MTS have to follow a special process that protects property owners before we can take action to acquire property outside of a negotiated sale. So some of those things are, we have to get an appraisal of the property and we have to make an offer to purchase, and we're required to pay what's called just compensation for the property. If property has tenants on it, those tenants are also entitled to some compensation or relocation expenses and benefits, where agencies have to help those tenants find a new place to relocate their business. And there's various benefits or expenses that we have to pay as part of that. We also have to give a notice of property owner rights, of just describing the process. And then what we're here today is to adopt a resolution of necessity that makes certain findings that support the agency's decision to acquire the property, because you have to have a good reason to need the property. So those findings that we're asking the board to make today are, number one, that the public interest and necessity require the project. And there's a lot more information in both the record here and the record from October of 2022 when we selected the site, but the CTAC project is necessary to allow MTS to expand our bus transit service and to accommodate our transition to zero emission buses by 2040. One of the other findings is that the project is planned or located in a manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury. That process was managed through the site selection process that we did under CEQA and Title VI for the civil rights analysis. And that also included an operational analysis where Site 7 was identified as the best location to allow MTS to efficiently plan and adjust our transit services in the future. One of the others findings is that the interest in the property sought to be acquired is necessary for the project. All four of the properties that make up Site 7, which includes both the Lone Oak and the Bayshore properties, are necessary to accommodate the CTAC facility. We can't just stop at the 8 acres we've already acquired. We need those additional 2 properties in order for the project, equipment, facility, structures that we need to build to actually function. One of the others is to make the finding that we did make the government code offers to purchase that follow the appraisal process and various considerations. And so we did conduct those appraisals and make those offers on June 14th and June 25th. And those offer letters are in the packet. Also, the notice of this resolution of necessity hearing needs to be provided to property owners. And so that notice was given to the property owners as stated under the applicable code section. Those were sent out on October 30th of this year, and those notices are in the attachments. So that leads us to the staff recommendation, which is to open the hearing and receive property owner and public testimony to determine that the offers to acquire the property were made in compliance with the government code, to adopt the resolution of necessities for each parcel and find that the public interest and necessity require the project, that the project is planned or located in a manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury, and that interests in the property to be acquired are necessary for the project. And then some additional findings related to the government code offer. I've kind of already gone through them, but just that they meet the standards of the government code. The attachments do show that we accompanied those offers with a summary of basis of the appraisal and gave them various other information about the process. And then finally, it would be to authorize general counsel and staff through outside counsel to proceed with condemnation proceedings necessary to acquire these private property interests. And I'm sorry, I put in the subject street right of way. I think I forgot to delete that from a prior thing, but so to just acquire these private property interests.
And I just want to follow up and reiterate, eminent domain is never something that we want to pursue. But as government agencies, sometimes you have to pursue it because we do need this new facility. If we are to comply with the zero emission bus requirements that the CARB has determined that we want to need to comply with, then we do need this extra facility. And we did go through an exhaustive process to try to find a place that would be the least impacted to private property owners that we could possibly do while still accommodating the large parcel that we need, the large property that we need. So I urge you to please support the recommendations that Karen has put before you, and we'll have the hearing.
And the only thing that I would add that I forgot to, so number one, I need 10 votes on this because it has to have 2/3 members of the board approval, and that we will always continue to negotiate. So this is to keep the process moving, but we would continue to negotiate with the property owners if they make any demands or proposals, and those would be discussed with the board in closed session.
Thank you, Ms. Landers. Thank you, Ms. Cooney. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do. David Foltz, please make your way to the podium.
Hi there. My name is David Foltz. I'm one of the property owners for Bayshore Group. We've owned the property since 1960 in our family. We've been an active community member. Our construction company that occupied the property originally is a union contractor that's done work all around San Diego since the 1950s. We're a long-term owner. We've never had any intention of selling the property. We're disappointed to hear that the property is going to be taken. We ask that if this is going to happen, that we get paid a fair price. We think the appraised price does not take into account the features, location, and functionality of the property. It's property we love and we've owned for a long time, and it's very sad that it's going to be taken from the family. So just wanted to let you know that we understand the situation and we're sad to have to go through this process. I guess that's it. Thank you.
Next is call-in user 1. Please unmute yourself now.
Okay, we already know MTS does not recognize Title VI very well, so having this bus charging facility in City Heights doesn't surprise me at all. Eminent domain in City Heights does not surprise me at all. Ancestrally having Sandag involved in this deal does not surprise me at all. Wasting millions and millions of people's tax dollars to build a facility that would not even be necessary if there wasn't a state and federal induced push to transition to an expensive, dirty, and toxic form of energy that goes against having a healthy, clean planet, as lithium batteries cause fires, have toxic fumes, and are not recyclable, doesn't surprise me at all. And doing all of this and not guaranteeing City Heights increased service does not surprise me at all. Why not have the location right there at 12th and Imperial instead? Remember where you guys just approved some housing? Why couldn't a location like that have been chosen instead? So yes, I am happy to condemn these proceedings and to remind everyone that due process and just compensation are not just some government code. They're actually requirements in the Constitution for the United States of America. And it's something that should be avoided at all costs, not kind of, well, we're going to do what the state wants, that type of thing. That's not in the Constitution, actually, if you read it. But thank you, Sharon, for your explanation of a horrible circumstance. Thank you.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. We will now open board discussion on this item, if there is any. And we will begin our conversation with Director Hall. I thought I turned on your microphone. Let's see what I did here. There you go.
Okay, so has both parties been cooperative with at least negotiating at that point?
So Lone Oak is represented by counsel and has been cooperating with us. They're obtaining their own appraisal and just have not completed that yet. And so understand the timing and the process of this, and when they get us their appraisal and what they think that the property is worth, then we will negotiate with them. So I think that it's been professional and friendly. You know, they just have their own timeline of getting back to us. Bayshore Group, we're hoping to be able to have the same discussions with them. It wasn't until notice of this that they responded to some of the other letters that we've done, you know, which I understand because they, you know, weren't interested in selling. And so we certainly hope that we can have the same cooperative dialogue. We're open to any opinions that they have of value of their property that our appraisal didn't take into consideration.
So it sounds like we need to, rather than do this now, we need to keep negotiating is what I'm hearing.
I think that we need to do this now to be able to keep the process moving, and we absolutely will keep negotiating through that, whether it is before we need to file or throughout the eminent domain process. There is a way to negotiate or assert value, so that always would be there. But we're happy to delay filing eminent domain if the property owner believes it will help them give them time to get the appraisal and make a demand to us. But in order to keep the project moving, we need to be in a process where we're going to acquire. This has also been an issue for us as we go forward to identify and seek funding to build this facility. You know, until we're in a process to acquire each of the properties, we're kind of not there yet. So that would be another reason that we need to keep the project moving forward, so that we then are more attractive in our grant applications.
Relocation cost and other factors too. How do we come up with those figures?
We have a relocation consultant who will meet with the tenants, identify what their needs are, and then go out and do a search for other properties that they could rent. And then they would come up with a budget estimate of what those costs would be.
Okay, because, you know, I mean, nothing personal, but I've moved before. I don't particularly like doing it, and I don't like trying to get everything around all the information that we have to do and all notifications and things like that. And I see this might be a little low, frankly, if you got that big a project, but that's just my opinion. But anyway, I think we need to keep negotiating. I'd like to see if we can put this off until time comes.
Thank you, Director Hall. Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I have a question about the Lone Oak. I know that the property, the Crest property across the street was built fairly recently.
Yes.
And I'm wondering about potential impacts to surrounding community members based off of any having to obtain whatever is done in the on the land that is proposed in this presentation for eminent domain, are there any impacts to the community based on operations that are there on that land, having to be moved? I'm just wondering if there's any additional impact that may not be in the report.
Not that was identified during the CEQA process. I mean, what we have understood from Lone Oak is that they were hoping to use that for potential future expansion, not current operations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I know that you all have been working on this for a very long time, and we've met with a lot of community members. It is something that the project, the CTAC project, we need, and we've been discussing it for at least 5 years. And I know that there were talks even before that. You know, I don't want to have to do this. Absolutely don't want to have to do that, but I know we're kind of 3/4 the way there. So I will go ahead and move staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp. Director Elo Rivera.
Thank you, Chair. And apologies for missing the first portion of the presentation, but Sharon, you were getting to this. I think it might be helpful to talk a little bit more about how the opportunity to come to an agreement exists up until the very, very end. And we're not precluding an amicable resolution to any of this by taking action today. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. I mean, our first goal would be to not have to file eminent domain or extensively litigate value. And so we are open, and under the law, we're required to pay for a portion of an appraisal that the property owner goes and gets and then consider it. And what we just don't have yet is the property owner having submitted to us what they think that their value is. And so what's the delta? You know, how far are we apart? I recognize that agencies have to be careful with taxpayer money. But at the same time, in an eminent domain context, a lot of benefit of the doubt is given to property owners and the valuations that they come with. And so, once we get their appraisal and the information that is there, we will absolutely consider it, negotiate it. If we need more authority from the board to pursue those property negotiations, we'll come back to you in closed session to discuss it. But that would be first and foremost. But even after we file, really the goal in this case is just getting to a value that both sides are comfortable with.
Yep, understood. There was an action the city took earlier this year. It involved multiple parcels for a bike path with the CTAC Project. A couple of those parcels, the resolution was found very, very quickly. A couple more, it took a little longer. And then, so what I'm getting at is there's a lot of room in the process. There's a situation we're trying to avoid, which is where a court determines, but there's a lot of runway between this action and there for there to be an amicable resolution to this issue. So with the hope that we find an amicable resolution where there's an agreement around what the fair market value is, I will second the motion, understanding that we need to do this to keep the process moving along. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I guess I don't know if it provides any comfort. Again, we're very conscious of being careful stewards of taxpayer funds, but I don't think it does anybody any favors for public agencies to try to lowball and get an appraisal that's a low value. I think all that does is create animosity, create litigation costs, make everybody unhappy with the process. And so, our goal is to, have appraisers who truly are independent and this is what the cost would be. And then to the extent we get another appraiser that disagrees with ours, we absolutely are open to discussing it. Because again, I don't think that it benefits the public agency in the long run to try to come in and negotiate like a super good deal of a discount, because I don't think that that's what happens in the end, so.
Thank you, Ms. Landers. Thank you, Director Elo Rivera. Seeing no further discussion on this item, we have a motion on the floor from Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp. We have a second from Director Elo Rivera. Clerk, please call the roll.
Members, please make your voting selections on the tablet. The motion passes with 10 members voting yes, 1 member voting no, and 4 members absent.
Thank you, Clerk, and thank you
Thank you.
for that discussion. We will move on to item 20. Item 20 is audit results and draft of fiscal year 2024 annual comprehensive financial report. And we're going to turn it over to Aaron Dunn to begin this presentation. Once you get set up and settled in, feel free to begin when you're ready.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. I'm Erin Dunn. I'm the controller here at MTS, and I have Jennifer Pentney, who is our assistant controller, and Coley Delaney, who is the managing partner on this engagement. He's going to go over the audit that just concluded for fiscal year 24. He'll talk about responsibilities and some key financial indicators and get to the results of the audit as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Erin. Yeah, so as she mentioned, my name is Coley Delaney. I am a partner with the Poon Group, and we were tasked with performing MTS's fiscal year 2024 audit. All right. So as Erin mentioned, I'm going to go over some management and auditors' responsibilities, a brief overview of the financial statements, some key pension and OPEB information, as well as the audit results. All right. So starting with management's responsibilities. Management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with U.S. GAAP. They are responsible for designing, implementing, and maintaining and maintenance of internal control relevant to the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements that are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. And in preparing the financial statements, management is required to evaluate whether there are conditions or events considered in the aggregate that raise substantial doubt about MTS's ability to continue as a going concern for 12 months beyond the financial statement date. As the auditors, our responsibilities are to form and express an opinion about whether the financial statements that have been prepared by management with board oversight are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with U.S. GAAP. We plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable but not absolute assurance about whether the financial statements are free of material misstatements. And we are also responsible for considering internal control over financial reporting. However, we do those considerations are solely for the purpose of determining our risk assessment and audit procedures, and we do not provide any assurance concerning such internal control. We're also responsible for exercising professional judgment and maintaining professional skepticism throughout the audit. We're responsible for identifying and assessing the risks of material misstatements to the financial statements, whether due to fraud or error, and to design and perform audit procedures responsive to those risks. We're responsible for obtaining an understanding of MTS's internal control relevant to the audit, but not for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of those internal controls. We are also responsible for evaluating the appropriateness of the accounting policies used and the reasonableness of significant accounting estimates made by management, as well as evaluate the overall presentation of the financial statements. And ultimately, we need to conclude whether in our judgment there are conditions or events considered in the aggregate that raise substantial doubt about MTS's ability to continue as a going concern for a reasonable period of time. So for a quick overview of the financial statements, I will start with a summary, condensed statement of net position for it says primary government up there. That is MTS. That does not include the fiduciary activities of the SDTC employee retirement plan. So we are showing year-over-year differences. Current assets this year saw a $27 million increase in cash and investments. The decrease in non-current assets was due mainly to depreciation on capital assets. For deferred outflows of resources related to pension, those decreased by $6.9 million in 2024. For current liabilities, those increased mainly due to unearned revenues increasing by $16 million. For non-current liabilities, those increased by $4.2 million due to increases in claims and pension liabilities of $7 million and a decrease in the OPEB liability of $3 million. For deferred inflows of resources, lease-related deferred inflows increased by $18.6 million due to some new lessor leases entered into by MTS. And overall net position decreased $80 million from last year, as we'll see on this next slide. So this one here, just the condensed income statement for MTS. This year, operating revenue saw an increase in passenger revenue of 4.9 million, and small changes in miscellaneous and advertising revenues made up the rest. For non-operating revenues, saw federal revenue decrease by 5.3 million and the state of good repair funding decrease also by $7 million. But increases in state revenue and Transnet funds helped to offset those other losses. For operating expense, the increase of $44 million was due mainly to a $16 million increase in personnel costs and a $29 million increase in outside services, and energy costs did fall from 2023 by $8 million. Capital contributions are fairly similar year over year, and non-operating expenses increased by $16 million mainly due to a loss on disposal of capital assets. For the summary statement of cash flows, operating activities, this is receipts from customers, payments to suppliers and employees, and for insurance claims. This decreased by 32 million in 2024 versus 2023, as cash paid to suppliers and employees increased by 26 million. Non-capital financing, this is public support, which includes federal grants, TDA funds, STA, Transnet, et cetera. Those cash flows increased by 22 million in 2024 versus 2023. For capital and related financing activities, an increase in cash outflows this year of $85 million. And that's mainly due to spending on capital asset additions jumping from $69 million in 2023 to $162 million in 2024. Cash flows from investing activities shows interest received on investments, which increased in 2024 due to higher interest rates and higher cash and investment balances in the portfolio throughout the year. So overall, increase in cash and cash equivalents of $34 million in 2024 compared to a $123 million increase in 2023. Now we're on to the summary statements of fiduciary net position. So this is the piece of the ACFR that is for the San Diego Transit Corp. SDTC Employee Retirement Plan. So here, the assets are made up essentially solely of plan investments, and so those increased $9.6 million this year over last year. The liabilities consist of amounts due to MTS, the plan sponsor, at June 30, and some other miscellaneous payables. Overall, the net position for the plan increased $9.8 million. This is the summary statement of changes in fiduciary net position, essentially the income statement for the pension, for the SETC plan. Starting with the contributions for each fiscal year match the actuarially determined contribution as calculated by the plan's actuaries. That increased $1 million in 2024. The net investment income in 2024 consisted of $9.2 million in realized and unrealized gains, plus $5.2 million in dividend earnings. And that increased by about $3 million from 2023. Distributions to plan participants also increased slightly, and the plan ended with a positive change in fiduciary net position of 9.8 million in 2024 versus a positive change of 6.3 million in 2023. Just some key pension and OPEB information that we like to point out. Obviously, all these numbers are included in the footnotes of the ACFR, but we do like to make the board aware of these disclosures that are in the ACFR. And what this basically shows is the sensitivity of MTS's net pension liability to a change in an actuarial input of the discount rate. So currently, MTS and SDTI plans use the 6.9% discount rate per CalPERS. PARS and the SDTC plan do use a more conservative 6% discount rate. But so what this shows you is that currently the aggregate net pension liability for MTS at June 30 is $229 million. Should there be a change in the discount rate, this table is basically showing you that all things being equal, if this discount rate were changed either plus 1% or minus 1%, this is what the change would be. So if CalPERS were to decrease, the discount rate by 1%, and then also an associated change with with SETC and the SETI PARS plan, that liability would jump again with all things being equal from 229 million to 308 million. So it's just something that we like to point out how sensitive the swings in the net pension liability can be to changes in actuarial inputs each year. This is the pension expense realized this year across the plans, 2024. 2024 was 36.7 million versus 34.5 million last year. So pension expense did increase by $2.2 million this year. This is similar to the pension liability sensitivity schedule. This is similar for OPEB as well. This year, the actuarial, the OPEB liability was determined using a 4.13% discount rate, which changes every year since MTS does not have plan assets in the OPEB plan. So it's subject to an average of a 3 to 20 year municipal bond index rate. So that rate did change. It increased from 3.09% last year. So it was over 1% increase. So 39.6 million is the actual liability on MTS's books. Again, if that were to go down by 1%, that liability goes up to 46.4%. And again, I mentioned that the change in the rate from last year was over 1%. So you're going to be subject to these types of swings. So that's why we include this disclosure in the ACFR. OPEB expense actually did, however, go down this year to 1.4 million from 2.5 million last year. And then lastly, I will report on MTS's federal single audit. So any entity, non-federal entity that expends over $750,000 of federal money in any given fiscal year is subject to a single audit. This year, MTS spent about $186 million in federal funds. And a vast majority of that, $184.4 million, was included in the federal transit cluster. And so that obviously was the program that was selected for testing as a major program this year. And we did not have any findings in internal control or compliance on that major program. So as far as audit results, we issued an unmodified opinion on the ACFR, which means that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. The significant accounting policies have been consistently applied. Estimates used are reasonable, and the disclosures are properly reflected in the financial statements. As far as other results, we're happy to say we had no disagreements with management. We noted no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls. And there were no accounting issues noted where there was a lack of authoritative guidance. And so with that, that concludes my presentation. I'd like to thank the board and the finance department, and we're happy to be able to continue to serve MTS in this capacity.
Thank you for your work on this and for the presentation. Clerk, do we have any public comment?
We do not.
All right, we will turn to board discussion on this item. This is an informational item, so no motion is necessary. And we'll begin our conversation with Director Moreno.
Thank you. I have 13 questions that I'm going to be asking you at this moment. Number one, during the audit, were you given full access to all employees that you needed to talk to for the purpose of preparing the audit?
Yes, we were given full access to anyone that we wanted to speak to.
Did you ever ask for access to an employee that you felt necessary to complete your audit and were denied access to that employee?
That did not occur.
Were you given full access to any documents, including ledgers and financial statements and financial documents for the purpose of preparing your audit?
Yes, we were. And I always like to point out that MTS, they also do provide us with read access to the accounting system, the financial system, so we can go in there on our own and look for things as well.
Did you ever ask for any documents, ledgers, or any financial documents from staff or executives that were refused to be provided to you?
No.
Did you find any financial practices being used by staff or executives to not be consistent with best practices of accounting?
No.
What is your overall assessment of the quality of the accounting, internal controls, and competency of staff?
Yeah, so we would say overall, MTS does an excellent job in designing internal controls, implementing those internal controls, and maintaining those internal controls. And that is true for even when they do have either staffing shortages or turnover within the department. They seem to always the audit always goes smoothly, and it's a very professional and competent finance department.
Thank you. How did you maintain independence during the course of the audit?
All right, so we maintain our objectivity and professional skepticism, and we are independent from MTS in both mind and appearance. We do not, as a firm, we do not perform any non-audit services for MTS, and we refrain from participating in management decisions. We have no financial or employment interests in MTS at the employee or firm level. And in 2024, we also changed pretty much the entire audit team in order to avoid a familiarity threat, since we have been doing the MTS audit for quite some time. So we changed the team up, brought in some new eyes. We also assign a quality control reviewer to the audit that is not a member of the audit team, and they perform additional review of the audit and all reports that are issued.
Thank you. Were there any accounting issues on which you sought the advice of another audit firm or regulatory bodies?
There were none.
Is it your opinion that this audit and MTS's financial record keeping deserve an unmodified opinion?
Yes.
What is the alternative to an unmodified opinion?
Okay. Yeah, so an alternative to an unmodified opinion would be a modified opinion, and there are three types of modified opinions. The first one, and they're kind of, will go in sort of degree of scale. The first one would be a qualified opinion, where we say, we refer to that as the except for opinion, where that means that everything in the statement except for some isolated piece is fairly presented, and then we have to explain why that one piece we are accepting. The other one, which is worse, would be an adverse opinion, and that's basically where we issue an opinion saying that the financial statements are not materially fairly stated for any given number of reasons. Usually those don't get issued because you would want to clear up those issues before actually issuing a statement. And then finally would be a disclaimer, where we basically do not render an audit opinion on the financial statements, and that would be, typically that would be due to a scope limitation, or there would not be a scenario where there would not be sufficient appropriate evidence that we could obtain to provide an opinion. So.
How many years has your company been conducting financial audits for MTS?
So the Poon Group has been engaged to do MTS's audit since the inception of the Poon Group, which is in 2012. But we were a successor of another firm that had been doing it. I believe the first year was 2005.
Have you ever found an MTS audit that you didn't ultimately conclude that it would be an unmodified opinion?
No.
Are there any new pronouncements and or risks affecting future financial statements which the board should be aware of?
MTS will have to do a little prep work, and we do have one GASB statement that will be issued next year. GASB Statement 101 affects, it's called compensated absences. So there will be some work to be done on that, but it should not be nearly as significant as some of the more recent GASB implementations.
Wonderful. Thank you for the presentation. That concludes my questions.
Thank you, Director Moreno, for asking the 13 questions. Any other discussion on this item? It is just an informational item, so no motion is necessary. And seeing no further discussion, we will thank you again for the presentation, and we will move along to item 21, which is the fiscal year 2024 final operating budget results. And we are going to invite Gordon Meyer to present this item. So feel free to get settled in, and when you're ready to begin your presentation, feel free to begin.
Good morning. My name is Gordon Meyer. I'm the manager of financial planning here at MTS. So this morning I'm going to provide the final look at our FY24 operating budget results, which was our fiscal year that just ended in June of 2024. So first we'll look at the operating revenue performance for the year. On the first line, you can see fair revenue. So here we finished the year unfavorable to budget by 2.2 million, or just under 3% unfavorable. Even though we finished unfavorable to budget, revenue was higher than the prior year by 4.9 million, or 7.2%. That was mainly driven by increases in ridership year over year. So we finished FY24 with 7.2 million passengers more than FY23, which was a 10.5% increase. That was partially offset by a decrease in year over year average fare. So we finished the year at 96 cents versus 99 cents the year before, and that was about a 3% decrease. Next line here, you can see other operating revenue. So here we finished the year favorable by 3.4 million, or 10.8%. A couple things driving that. We had favorable interest revenue, rental income, and then we had a 2.1 million favorable variance for the gain on sale of assets, which was revenue that we generated from selling 2 land parcels. We sold one in Santee and then one on Fairmont Ave as well. And we'll come back to that at the end of the presentation. So overall, our operating revenues finished the year at 107 million, which was favorable by 1.2 million to our mid-year budget. So moving on to expenses. So personnel costs, we finished the year favorable by 1.5 million, or 0.8%. That was primarily due to favorable cost recovery related to the flood. We had costs that were within trolley work orders that were reclassed to the flood operations at the end of the year. So that caused a favorable variance for our MTS expenses, since those costs will be ultimately reimbursed. And then we also had favorable paid absences within bus operations. Next line, we have purchase transportation. So that's our fixed route contract as well as paratransit. So here we finished the year favorable 1.3 million. On the fixed route side, we were favorable due to performance bonuses. And then on the paratransit side, we were favorable in service levels, specifically the third party piece of the service, where we have taxis operate some of that demand on the paratransit side. Other outside services were unfavorable by 544,000. That was unfavorable legal costs within administration, and then repair and maintenance costs within trolley, specifically the graffiti damage and vehicle repairs for LRV maintenance. Next line, we have energy. So this was the major variance for the year, and really good news on this side. So we finished the year favorable by 3.6 million, or 7.4%. That was primarily CNG, and also electricity had a pretty big piece of that as well, all driven by commodity rates. So if you remember a couple of years ago in FY23, we saw astronomically high commodity rates, especially on the CNG side, and then that impacted the commodity price for electricity as well. In the first half of FY24, those rates were still high, and then we really started to see them kind of start a gradual decline in the second half of FY24. So we felt the positive impact of that in FY24, and that's continuing into this year as well, where the commodity rate has actually gone back down to the historical norms of $2 to $3 per therm on the CNG side. So good news for FY24, and it's continuing as well. Next line, we have other expenses, favorable 554,000. That was some favorable risk management costs, and then some desktop purchases in IT got pushed out into FY25, so that caused a little bit of a favorable variance in FY24. So final operating expenses for FY24 were just under 408 million, which was 6.4 million favorable to budget, or about 1.5%. So on this slide, you can see our operating activities combined. So we finished the year 7.6 million favorable to budget for our operating activities. However, the missing piece from this is the non-operating activities in terms of our overall MTS operating budget. And so we need to add back in subsidy revenue, as well as some of the other non-operating categories. So before we get to the performance in those categories, I wanted to give a brief description. So federal revenue, that is our recurring FTA funds for preventive maintenance, as well as rural operations. Federal stimulus funds, that was our FTA CARES Act and ARP funds. We had 360 million in total. We've drawn 313 million of that through the end of FY24. So we have about 50 million that we're finishing up drawing in the first half of FY25. TDA, Transportation Development Act, that's the 0.25% of the regional sales tax assessed in the region, and it's administered by both Sandag and the county. Transnet, that's the 0.5-cent sales tax in San Diego County to fund transportation projects specifically. We receive both a formula share, which is dependent upon sales tax cash receipts, and then we also receive a direct reimbursement from Sandag for the net cost of operating Transnet funded operations, which for us is the BRT services as well as Midcoast. State transit assistance, that's the state sales tax on diesel fuel. It's distributed based on a formula. And then lastly, we have Senate Bill 125 TIRCP, which we've referred to as SB 125. That's the $4 billion in formula funding, TIRCP. So we received the first payment. That caused a lot of headache last year. We did receive that first payment of 130 million, and we are moving forward with our plan and have started to spend it, including in FY24. So here you can see the actual performance in these categories. So federal recurring revenue, we were unfavorable by 326,000, or about 0.5%. We didn't receive as much rural operations reimbursement from our 5311 and 5311F grants. TDA and Transnet were very close to budget. Do want to highlight that we did draw 85 million in federal stimulus funds. That was exactly what we budgeted. STA, that's really the variance worth discussing here. So we typically budget 11.3 million in the operating budget. In the FY24 mid-year amendment, we had brought that down to 8.4 million. That was based on the most recent governor's projection of the diesel sales tax revenue. And so the final cash figure that we received was higher than that projection. And so that favorable variance went into the operating budget. And so that's why we had a 1.7 million favorable variance there. SB 125, small variance, but we were able to draw our initially planned 4.5 million. So in total, subsidy revenue was favorable by 1.3 million, or just under 0.5%. So the other non-operating activities are reserves and debt service. So on the reserve side, we budgeted contributing 30.4 million. The vast majority of that is the operating budget deficit reserve, where we budgeted contributing 30.2 million to the reserve. We were able to contribute exactly 30.2 million to the operating budget deficit reserve. And then we transferred a little more than we had anticipated for the for-hire vehicle administration and the SDNAE, or San Diego and Arizona Eastern reserves, which those are both two very small self-funded entities that have their own reserves. Next line, debt service, small variance. Just wanted to bring this up because we will no longer have debt service going forward. FY24 was the last year where we had payments on our pension obligation bonds. So that line will be going away. And so bottom line, non-operating revenues and expenses were favorable to budget by 1.2 million, or 0.4%. So on this slide, you can see our overall operating budget performance for the year, as well as a look at our structural deficit. So you can see for FY24, we finished the year with 357 million in recurring revenues, and we had 408 million in expenses. So we had a structural deficit of 50.2 million, which was about $9 million more favorable to what we were projecting in the budget. So that's good news. We have done a revised forecast, adding back in the SB 125 now that we received that. It doesn't move the needle in terms of when we expect to hit the fiscal cliff. We are still expecting to hit that in FY28, but it nonetheless was good news. To get to our overall operating budget performance for the year, we need to add back in the non-recurring revenues. So you can see the reserves activity. We reflect the 30.5 million contribution to reserves. Then we drew the 85 million in stimulus funds, and then you can see the 4.5 million in SB 125 funding that we consider one-time in nature as well. Including those activities, our final favorable variance for the year was 8.8 million. And so that brings us to the question of what do we do with that 8.8 million? And so wanted to remind the board of our contingency reserve policy. So we set the target at 12.5% of the operating expense budget. So for FY25, after backing out transnet funded activities, our target is 49.7 million. Our current reserve balance as of today is 45 million. So we need about 4.7 million to get to our target. As we just covered, we have 8.8 million in excess revenues over expenses for FY24. We do an interest adjustment where interest that was earned overall needs to be allocated to the for-hire vehicle administration and the SD&AE reserves. After doing that adjustment, we have 8.4 million in total that we need to program. And so the staff recommendation is to allocate 2.1 million in land proceeds sales. So that was from the Fairmont and Santee land sales that I mentioned in the operating revenue slide. So the recommendation is to allocate that to the FY26 capital improvement program so that it can be allocated to a CIP. We also recommend allocating 2.5 million to increase the liability insurance self-insured retention, or SIR, from 5 million to 7.5 million. In FY24, when we were negotiating our new premiums for the liability insurance, the monthly premiums went up dramatically. And in order to reduce that monthly premium, we needed to increase our self-insured amount. And so anytime we increase the self-insured amount, we put that into a reserve so that if we need to draw upon that, it's available and it doesn't cause a $7.5 million hit to the operating budget that was unanticipated. And then that leaves 3.8 million, which we recommend allocating to the contingency reserve. So allocating 3.8 would put us at 48.8 million, or 12.3% of the FY25 operating budget. That is short of our target. However, we currently have 87 million in our operating budget deficit reserve as of June 30th. And so we believe we have much more than 12.5% available for the operating budget. And then I did just want to highlight the fact that FY24 was the last year that we'll be contributing to the operating budget deficit reserve, and beginning in FY25, we'll start drawing that down. So the clock is technically starting on hitting the fiscal cliff. And with that, that brings us to the final staff recommendation that the Board of Directors approve the allocation of excess revenues over expenses in FY24 to the following: allocate 2.1 million in land sale proceeds to the MTS CIP for FY26, allocate 2.5 million to increase the self-insured retention from 5 to 7.5 million for the liability insurance, and then allocate the remaining 3.8 million to the contingency reserve. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
All right, we will open it up to board discussion. Any questions? We'll take any motions, and we will begin with Director Moreno.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Definitely a lot to digest. My question is, why doesn't this come to the Budget Committee? Because I know that the last time we had a meeting was in August, but I was curious because this is an actionable item.
I know I went to the Executive Committee. I don't really have a good answer for why we didn't schedule another Budget Development Committee for this.
We don't traditionally go to with this, do we?
I think we've
No,
done
in the past,
both.
we haven't gone to the budget committee with it. It's really more of a timing of when we get our receipts for the end of year. And then it dovetails with the audit as well. So, and do you want to add to that?
No, I think you hit it. It's, the timing in which we finalize our financial statements, bringing the act we want to take it to the Executive Committee for a recommendation and overall oversight. And we do it at the Executive Committee, and then we bring it to the board at that point.
It's probably one of the biggest budget documents, though, of the year, right? Would you say so?
Yeah, it's a finalization of where we ended up from a budgetary standpoint. From a policy and a direction standpoint, all of those directions really come from the Budget Development Committee, and that's why we schedule those 3 to 4 times a year. And some ad hoc meetings as well, if in case there are funding issues, other things that
Yeah.
need just budget direction.
But
these are more.
traditionally, this action usually comes at the same time because we wait. So there's no reason why we shouldn't already schedule a budget committee meeting, in end of October, beginning of November, so that not only the budget committee, but also the community have, ample time to digest it. So I would ask the chair in the future that we definitely schedule some, it's a big deal. We're allocating extra funding that we have available. And I do thank staff for being diligent in listening to what the board has mentioned throughout the whole year, but it did come as a surprise. And I know that it shouldn't have been a surprise because this is traditionally how we do it. But I would like to request that you guys come to the budget committee.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
And we'll do that. Thank you for the suggestion. Any further discussion on this item? We will need a motion on this.
I'm happy to make the motion, sorry.
Okay, we have a motion from Director Moreno. Do we have a second from Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp? Seeing no further discussion, clerk, please call the roll.
Members, please make your voting selection on the tablet. The motion passes with 12 members voting yes and 3 members absent.
Thank you, clerk. All right, item 22 is America Plaza Pedestrian Enhancements Contract Award. We're going to hand it off to Heather Feary to provide our presentation. Once you get settled in and ready to go, feel free to begin.
Good morning. I'm not Heather Feary, but she is here with me. Dennis Desmond, Director of Planning and Scheduling. I'm joined by Heather Feary, our Director of Capital Projects, as well as Beverly Neff, who is our Senior Planner for the downtown and South Bay areas, and she's the project manager for planning on this project. The project we're talking about today is the America Plaza Pedestrian Enhancements Project. I think most people are familiar with the Santa Fe Depot and America Plaza area around Kettner Boulevard and downtown. This is a very significant hub for our operations. We have both the blue and the green line trolleys serving this location. We have 3 of our busiest rapid routes here, the Mid-City, the South Bay, and the I-15 Rapids. We have 2 rapid express routes. We have a number of local routes in addition, including our airport 992. So a big transfer point for people getting to and from the airport. Additionally, obviously Santa Fe Depot is served by the Coaster and the Pacific Surfliner Amtrak. So while these services generally operate as one cohesive transit center using both the America Plaza on the east side of Kettner and Santa Fe Depot on the west side, it's a lot of different individual components. And our passengers have reported that the area is confusing to navigate and it's difficult to find out how to transfer between different locations. So the goal of this project was really to make these connections not only more intuitive, but also safer for people. So knowing that this was an issue for people using this facility, we did apply for and receive a Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program Grant Award. This is a state grant program in 2018. We began the community engagement and planning process over the next couple of years, and our design consultants came up with 3 different options, continued that community engagement and narrowed it down to a final selected project that includes a lot of features, including the reconstruction of Kettner Boulevard, new bus bays for the rapid buses on southbound Kettner Boulevard. So they're currently just stopping in the traffic lane on the southbound Kettner. A new crosswalk across Kettner Boulevard for safer transfers between the depot and America Plaza in a location where people are currently not using a crosswalk. We're adding some traffic calming measures. Really importantly, we're adding new wayfinding signage to help folks find where they're going to. And we're going to have upgraded facilities for disabled users, bringing everything up to current code with new curb ramps, et cetera. We continue the design work throughout the pandemic. our design consultant, Mott McDonald, working with MTS and the city of San Diego. The project is very complex. It deals with not only a lot of modifications to the city right-of-way on Kettner Boulevard, but also potential parking impacts, signaling changes. There's a trolley crossing, and we have new pedestrian safety facilities. So between all of these elements, there was a lot of back and forth with city traffic engineering and city design review that actually went over for an extended period of time. So we weren't able to finalize and get the design out to bid until the middle of this year. So our independent cost estimate at the beginning of this project was $3.2 million. Both of the bids we received came in substantially higher than that. The lower bid, DLF, was at $6.2 million. We're going to be recommending that for an award today. The reason why these came out higher than the independent cost estimate is really due to the cost escalation we've seen across the board. This was a much longer design and review period than we had anticipated, so it was actually several years old, the ice, by the time we got to the bids. And then inflation has really increased the cost of all our projects. Labor, construction materials, everything. We're seeing this really across the board on everything. So we do need an additional $4 million to complete the project. We had a lot of internal discussion about whether we wanted to cancel the project at this point with this substantial cost increase, or whether we would seek that $4 million. If we did cancel the project, we would lose the $3 million in the TIRCP grant. This means that if we were to pick this up at another time and build this again, we'd have the full cost. We wouldn't have that grant to help us out with that. And we would also need to repay about $700,000 to the state in funds that we've already spent on this. So our staff recommendation today is that we authorize the CEO to execute a contract with DLF in the amount of $6,170,714.35 for the America Plaza pedestrian enhancements, and approve the transfer of $4 million in the CIP to the America Plaza pedestrian enhancements project. These $4 million in funds are remaining from other projects, either canceled or delayed, and these funds are typically carried over to the next CIP cycle. In this case, we'd be holding them back and adding them to the America Plaza pedestrian enhancements project. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Desmond. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do. Call-in user 1, please unmute yourself now.
Hey there, I'm actually really disappointed I never heard Heather. And on page 1394 of the agenda packet, slide 2 has the word "that" repeated twice. So that makes both the presentation and the stations difficult to navigate. Slower car speeds are not going to help a flawed crosswalk design. For the record, no one's worried about fast cars. They're worried about getting hit by trolleys at an awkward angle right next to an awkwardly placed and not very visible crosswalk. Much like this presentation, more visuals are needed. Signs pointing to crosswalks would be helpful. I don't know if it's possible, but stop signs for pedestrians to be aware of oncoming trolleys would also be helpful, much like there is at the Park and Market station. And what are the parking impacts exactly? The city of San Diego just lost about 100 more parking spots, so it's kind of really important to know details about. So this fix is long overdue, so overdue the cost skyrocketed by $4 million. But I'm looking forward to some changes, especially because there's going to be that new military museum right there at America Plaza. I guess that means an incentive to make it look nice, unlike many of the other stations. But besides design functionality, the blue line frequency from America Plaza is the slowest of any location for the blue line. Why is it often a 20-minute wait? That's another reason people are rushing over to the Santa Fe Depot station, so they can actually catch a trolley faster than if they stayed waiting there. And that's another reason why they're crossing where there's no crosswalk. Not only can they not see it, they're in a rush to get where they're going. As you know, the design is bad, so I think you should stick with it, finish what you started, you know, kind of the opposite of Sandag. Think that way. Thank you.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
All right, thank you very much, Clerk. We will open this up to board discussion. And I'll just start by thanking staff for all of the time and effort and work that has gone into this. Obviously, this has been a long time coming. We have to prioritize safety and the ability of people to navigate that area. Appreciate the emphasis on making this easier for people with disabilities. I think that is very important. So I'm happy to make the motion to approve the staff recommendation. And we have a second from Director Gastel. And let's go to Director Leyba Gonzalez. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Chair, I'd like to recuse myself from this vote because of my day responsibilities that I have.
Okay, thank you. And we have a recusal from Director Leyba Gonzalez. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, noting the recusal, clerk, please call the roll.
Members, please make your selection on the tablets. The motion passes with 9 members voting yes, 1 member recusing themselves, and 4 members absent.
Okay, thank you very much, clerk. All right, that brings us to item number 23. Item 23 is the appointment of an ad hoc nominating committee for recommending appointments to MTS committees and a chair pro tem for 2025. Each year, this board makes appointments to a number of internal and external boards and committees. It also appoints a chair pro tem. We begin that process today by appointing an ad hoc nominating committee. That committee will meet and ultimately forward recommendations to the board, which will ultimately vote on the appointments. The nominating committee can have up to 7 members whom we will select during this item. After we hear public comment, I'll request nominations from the floor. Typically, board members who would like to serve on the nominating committee nominate themselves by volunteering. If we end up with more than 7 members who nominate themselves, then we will vote on each candidate. Typically, we don't have that many people who volunteer, but if we do, we'll vote on each candidate. For those who are interested in serving on particular committees, but who don't have time to serve on the nominating committee, you could just let us know what committees you would like to serve on, and we will have that information when we meet. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do. Call in user 1. Please unmute yourself now.
Hey there, back again. This item was actually a little bit hard to understand because I thought it meant you guys were going to create yet another committee so you could argue about who should be on what ineffective board. And I was going to say, what unnecessary bureaucracy. You guys could just say it out loud. But it sounds like that actually is going to happen, maybe both. So that being said, I wouldn't mind still having to see Matthew at Sandag, have to. But maybe have Ron as his alternate because I imagine Ron would say too many true things that some at Sandag couldn't handle, and that could be really fun. For the Transportation Committee, I recommend whoever needs to be punished because that committee is often boring. So is the Regional Planning Committee. I'm going to actually recommend somebody like Alonzo would be good. For the Audit Oversight Committee, I recommend that just gets eliminated because it's obviously not working. Something's not going right, even though you had sounded like a good audit report. Something about the numbers doesn't seem to add up. However, whatever has to do with looking closely at the numbers, I'm going to recommend Validator Vivian on there. She loves asking up to 13 questions to ensure transparency, and I very much appreciate that close eye on things. So that's all. I'm not sure about the other ones. They're really boring. I hope somebody's going to nominate themselves. Thank you.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
All right, thank you very much, clerk. All right, let's take nominations to serve on the ad hoc nominating committee. Again, typically people just nominate themselves if they're interested in serving on the committee. And we'll begin with Director Moreno.
I'm interested in nominating Vivian Moreno.
All right, Vivian Moreno nominates Vivian Moreno, which is exactly what we are looking for here. And we will go to Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp.
Thank you, Chair. I will volunteer and nominate myself as well.
All right. And we will go to Director Elo Rivera.
I'm also interested and would nominate myself as well.
All right, let's go to Director Dillard.
I would like to nominate myself as well.
All right, we are going to go to Vice Chair Goebel.
I'd like to nominate myself as well.
All right, we're going to go to Director Leyva Gonzalez.
I nominate Councilmember Marcus Bush.
All right. All right, that is 6. I will nominate myself, and that takes us to 7. If we have anybody else who would like to nominate themselves, that would be fine. It would then result in a vote on each nominee. Otherwise, we'll go with the 7 that we currently have. All right, it looks like the body is good with the 7 that we have. I will read those names and then we will vote on those 7 names as a body. We have Director Moreno, Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp, Director Ela Rivera, Director Dillard, Vice Chair Goebel, Director Bush, and myself. And seeing no further discussion, we will. Oh.
Chair, can you unmute him, please?
Yeah, let's go back here. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, you can hear me now. Oh, no, I don't think you guys heard me before. No, I was not interested, and I think you guys have enough of a committee, so I'd like to pull my name. But I appreciate that. So thank you, Member Leyva Gonzalez, for your confidence and belief. And you guys are good.
Okay, no nomination, but a vote of confidence. All right. Okay, and we have Director Hall. All right, so we have 7, Director Moreno, Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp, Director Ela Rivera, Director Dillard, Vice Chair Goebel, Director Hall, and myself. Seeing no further discussion, we will take a vote on those 7 nominees to serve on the ad hoc nominating committee, which will recommend appointments to MTS committees for 2025, as well as a Chair Pro Tem. No, you could vote for yourself even if you nominated yourself. We're an inclusive organization. Yes.
Are you taking a first and a second? For the
Oh, I guess. Thank you. That's a very good catch. Okay, so I will make the motion to do this. Do we have it? We have a second from the Chair Pro Tem. All right, kudos to the clerk. Clerk, please call the roll.
Members, please make your selection on the tablets. The motion passes with 12 members voting yes and 3 members absent.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, clerk. We have one closed session item today, but before that, let us take item 26, which is Chair, Board Member, and CEO Communications. And I'm going to begin by going up to the podium because we have a special recognition today. All right. Well, I would like to begin by taking a moment to recognize outgoing Director of Planning and Scheduling, Dennis Desmond, who is retiring after more than 25 years at MTS. I know that Dennis has been an outstanding colleague to countless employees, a mentor to many, and an inspiration to those who not only work in transit, but have a passion for seeing transit succeed. Dennis began his career in transit as a bus operator for Unitrans at UC Davis. And ever since then, he has been advancing the mission of transit. Dennis has a keen understanding of the connections between operations and planning, scheduling, community outreach, and other elements to the complex web of service planning. In the past 2 decades, Dennis has played an integral role in some major MTS initiatives that everybody here is familiar with, launching numerous new services, including our rapid bus network, which carries millions of passengers every year, planning for numerous trolley expansions and comprehensive bus service changes, Implementing the Transit Optimization Plan, a $2 million plan that increased ridership and streamlined service and added frequency to dozens of routes. Launching Rapid 227, our first rapid route with dedicated electric buses. Developing a successful formula for UC San Diego's UPass, pricing structure and strategic service planning for students, and much more. Dennis, as you step into this new chapter of retirement, know that you leave a legacy that will continue to resonate and continue to shape MTS. We hope that your retirement is filled with the things that you like to do, running the hills of Balboa Park, exploring San Diego's bikeways, taking photos of transit vehicles, and traveling the world. Please join me, and we will present you with a plaque honoring your service. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This has been just an honor and a pleasure to work at MTDB and now MTS. It's just such an incredible organization. I've had an amazing career. I couldn't have asked for anything better. And I'll just make one small addition to this, that my career in transit actually started in high school as a bus rider. I didn't have a driver's license. I rode San Diego Transit everywhere, and that's where my passion for this industry began. And it's just absolute capstone of a career to be able to serve here. Thank you very much.
All right, do we have any more communications? We will go to Vice Chair Goebel.
Thank you, Chair. Last month, I think it would be at this point, there was an awards dinner of WTS International, the San Diego County chapter. Member Dillard and I attended that dinner. It's an awards dinner for Ms. Kenna Teon. I think you're in the back hiding, aren't you? Kenna received the Rosa Parks Diversity Leadership Award, a very prestigious award among the, I don't know what WTS stands for, I'm sorry.
Women's Transportation Seminar, but it's professionals in transportation. It's open to men and women.
And this is a nationwide organization, the San Diego County chapter. Kenna is our grants administrator, correct? She's certainly an inspiration and a role model for everyone. And so congratulations on a great recognition last month.
Congratulations. Thank you very much, Vice Chair Goebel. Any further communications? We will go to Director Gastel, if you'd like to go ahead and indicate.
Oh, it's the hard button on the.
All right.
Yeah, I wanted to say the Facilitating Access to Coordinated Transportation FACT annual meeting is December 4th. MTS Chair Stephen Whitburn is among the speakers, and Mayor John McCann of Chula Vista is also among the speakers. And it will be a wonderful annual meeting in Balboa Park at the Menge Museum. So if anybody didn't get an invitation, wants to attend on Wednesday morning, then I'll make sure you get your invite. It'll be a wonderful event, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gastel. Looking forward to that, and thank you for all your service with FACT.
Thank you. It's been quite a joy.
All right. Any further communications? Seeing none, we have one closed session item. It is a conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation. Clerk, do we have any public comment on the closed session agenda?
We do. Call in user 1. Please unmute yourself now.
Okay, there we go. Sorry button. Let's see. I just really wanted to say that you guys are having way too much fun. I hope closed session is going to be just as fun when you talk about SDG&E. You know, unless you deserve to be punished, like mischievous Matthew. Have a good day. Thank you.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
All right. With that, we will move into closed session.
All right, reporting out of closed session, agenda item 25, closed session conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, the San Diego Gas and Electric Company versus Metropolitan Transit System. The board received a report and gave instructions to legal counsel.
This meeting is now adjourned.